Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And this week, wow, just so many breaches once again. But before I dive in, I'd like to thank the following people that messaged me, linked me, tagged me, did whatever it was to get me this information. And that would be David Walker, Chris Fallon, Jason Dance, Jacqueline Wolf, Barrett Peterson, Sanjay Tupor, and Susan Brown. Guys, thank you so much. It is always appreciated. And if you have a tip for me, let me know and I will be happy to give you a shout out as well. Now with that, let's dive in and go to an update on a company called Glow Inc. They are a fertility app because the California Attorney General, Xavier Becerra, announced in September that a settlement against Glow Inc. Is there to resolve allegations that the fertility app exposed millions of women's personal and medical information. Now, in the complaint, the AG alleged violations of certain state consumer protection and privacy laws stemming from privacy and security quote-unquote failures in Glow's mobile application known as the Glow app. Now, the settlement, which remains subject to court approval, requires Glow to comply with relevant consumer protection and privacy laws, including obviously HIPAA and California's TCPA and all of that, and mandates, and I quote, a first ever injunctive term that requires Glow to consider how privacy security lapses may uniquely impact women and imposes a $250,000 civil penalty on the company. So heads up if you've ever used the Glow app, for your fertility. Moving on, let's talk about Broad Voice. This is a voice over IP provider. Security researcher Bob Diachenko recently discovered an exposed cluster of databases belonging to them, and this had records of more than 350 million customers. Now, the exposed Elasticsearch cluster was discovered on October 1st of this year, and the cluster was basically indexed into a public search engine, if you will. Now, the Elasticsearch cluster was found to contain 10 collections of data, the largest of which was 275 million records, which included things like caller names, phone numbers, caller locations, and other sensitive data. Now, one database in the cluster was found to contain transcribed voicemail messages, which included a range of sensitive information about financial loans, medical prescriptions, and more. More than 2 million voicemail records were included in that subset of data, 200,000 of which had been transcribed. Now, the voicemails also included caller names, phone numbers, voicemail box identifiers, internal identifiers, and the transcripts included personal information such as full names, phone numbers, dates of birth, and other data. Voicemails left at medical clinics included details of prescription and medical procedures. Information about loan inquiries were also exposed, along with insurance policy numbers as well. That's obviously a huge thing. So hopefully Broad Voice is going to be locking that down, and hopefully nobody illegally accessed that. Moving on, let's talk about Albion Online. Apparently, this is a massive multiplayer online game because an attacker basically breached their forum and stole usernames and password hashes. And this is according to the game maker on Saturday. This is the company that makes this game is called Sandbox Interactive. And I quote, the intruder was able to access forum profiles, which include the email addresses connected to those accounts. The attacker also went ahead and got the passwords, but they are saying, Sandbox Interactive is saying that they're using bcrypt to essentially encrypt and hash those passwords. So hopefully those are secure, but if you use Albion Online or their forum, you may want to change your password. Moving on, let's talk about pharmaceutical giant Pfizer, because they leaked private medical data of prescription drug users in the United States for months or possibly even years, thanks to an unprotected Google Cloud storage bucket. Now, the exposed data includes phone call transcripts, personally identifiable information, and just beyond. The victims include people using pharmaceuticals like Lyrica, a smoke cessation aid known as Chantix. I see their commercials on YouTube like all the time. I don't even smoke. Viagra, everybody knows that one. Menopause drug Preermin, cancer treatments such as Aromacin, Depomedrol, and Ibrance. Now, I apologize if I am butchering any of these, but if you take any one of these, heads up to you. Some of the transcripts were related to conversations about Advil as well, which is actually manufactured by Pfizer in a joint venture with GlaxoSmithKline. Advil, obviously a very common ibuprofen. Now, the person identifiable information that was exposed includes names, home addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, and partial details for health and medical status. But the most concerning thing are the transcripts, which are related to Pfizer's automated customer support system. And so, heads up, if you've ever contacted Pfizer or one of your medical professionals has, you might want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about Beijer-Ref out of France, or rather their French division. They are a refrigeration and air conditioning wholesaler, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Beijer-Ref's French operations were recently the target of a cyber attack, costing them about 2.4 million euros in lost sales. Now, the problem was limited to its French GFF, Coffre-Set, and Delclim businesses, and basically to a very limited degree outside of France. So this was mostly in France. The computers in those areas were shut down by Beijer-Ref as a security precaution, and according to their COO, basically the data was not, or rather customer data was not compromised in the attack. So heads up, if you have anything to do with them, you might want to check in. Moving on, let's head on over to Montreal in Canada, because their public transport system, known as STM, and I am not about to try and pronounce that French, was hit with a ransom EXXware attack, and it's impacted their services and online systems. Now, on October 19th, STM, the public transit system, suffered this outage that affected its IT systems, its website, and its customer support. These outages did not affect the operation of their buses or metro systems, but people with disabilities who rely on STM's door-to-door paratransit service are affected, as it uses an online registration system. Obviously, that's a very big deal. Now, this past Tuesday morning, STM announced that outages were caused by a quote-unquote computer virus that caused a major failure on various platforms. Later that evening, on the same Tuesday, STM confirmed they had suffered a ransomware attack and were working with Montreal law enforcement and external experts to repair this. And so hopefully Montreal's public transit system will get back to normal. Moving on, let's head down to Toledo, Ohio, and talk about their public schools, because according to local news, nearly 9 gigabytes of sensitive data belonging to the Toledo public school system has been exposed. Information leaked by the attackers includes names, addresses, dates of birth, phone numbers, and social security numbers. The data appearance online follows a distributed denial of service attack that was carried out against the TPS school system, and that was in the beginning of September 2020. So it looks like a secondary attack after the denial of service went and exfiltrated 9 gigabytes of data out of their network. So heads up if you have anything to do with Toledo Public Schools. Moving on, let's talk about Beacon Health Solutions, because the REvil or Revil attackers posted more than 600 gigabytes they claim to have stolen from Beacon Health Solutions, and they are a HIPAA business associate that provides business process outsourcing solutions as well as integrated health benefits and claims administrations, meaning there's going to be a whole bunch of medical facilities, large or small, that are now going to have to be declaring breaches because their supply chain, Beacon Health Solutions, got hit. Now, according to the screenshots that were shared with various sources, the attackers hacked and encrypted all servers and working computers of Beacon Health. They allegedly exfiltrated a wide range of sensitive information, including personal details, financial documents, social security numbers of clients, bank documents, and phone records. So heads up, if you work for anything medical that uses Beacon Health Solutions, you may have been impacted. That's a huge amount of data. Moving on, let's talk about Wilmington Surgical Associates, because NetWalker attackers allegedly claim to have stolen about more than 13 gigabytes of data from them. One proof that was also shared with the media was about 4.83 gigabytes containing at least 4,266 files and 478 folders from Wilmington Surgical Associates, who's in North Carolina. Now, the files are named Return DHHS Checks, 2019 Photos, Admin Scans, Doctor Pictures, Forms, Insurance Scan, Medical Incentives, Vascular Labs, and on and on and on. Just a ton of stuff. Now, another group that was exposed was 1.79 gigabytes of data with over 3,700 files, and that has a whole bunch of year-end stuff. It is a complete mess. So if you have anything to do with Wilmington Surgical Associates, you might want to check in North Carolina. Moving on, let's head on down to Riverside, because Riverside Community Care on October 21st apparently were hit. The Conti threat actors posted data they claimed on October 21st to have exfiltrated Riverside Community Care in Massachusetts, which is a behavioral health care and human services provider. This includes child and family services. Now, the proof shared, again with the media, include files with PDFs of driver's licenses and incident reports, as well as employment information and documents. Basically, as I'm talking to you here, the data has already been viewed by about 20 people or so. So that's obviously a very serious issue. Hopefully, they're okay. But if you have anything to do with Riverside Community Care in Massachusetts, heads up. Moving on, let's talk about Indian drug maker Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, because on October 22nd, they isolated all of their data centers as a preventative measure after detecting a cyber attack. And to quote their CIO, Mukesh Rathi, "We are anticipating all services to be up within 24 hours. We do not foresee any major impact on our operations due to this incident," and hopefully that will actually be true because they are working, or one of the many that are working, to try and find a vaccine for the coronavirus. Moving on, let's talk about Hall County in Georgia. The attack on Hall County, basically this is where Gainesville, Georgia is, their largest city, was disclosed on October 7th, but the impact on the election infrastructure is now coming to light. Yesterday on Saturday, I did a U.S. election security news thing of the week where I aggregated all of this. I found this morning, otherwise it would have been there yesterday. And if you want more election security news, check out my video from yesterday or my podcast. Now, among the county's affected systems were voter signature database, as well as a voting precinct map hosted on the county's website. Basically, this is going to be a huge problem that we're going to have to look at in terms of disruption of voting services. You may not be able to, if you're a foreign threat actor, change the vote total, but you sure as can disrupt the election or sow disinformation. So heads up, Hall County, Georgia. Hopefully you're back online. Moving on, let's talk about French IT outsourcer Sopra Steria. They are huge. They got hit by a ransomware attack, and while the company did not reveal the family of malware, it is believed that it's the Ryuk ransomware. Now, they have, 46,000 employees operating in 25 countries worldwide, and it provides IT services, including software development and consulting. So obviously that's a huge problem, and hopefully they will get back online. But if you use Sopra Steria, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Boyne Resorts. They own about a dozen or so ski and golf resorts in the Pacific Northwest, from what I understand. They were the victim of Wasted Locker ransomware attacks. And essentially, this has impacted their reservation system. Now, according to Bleeping Computer, the ransomware initially breached corporate offices and then moved laterally into their IT systems, just basically hitting everything. As a result of this attack, the company was then forced to shut down portions of its network to prevent the ransomware from spreading. Customers of the company were not able to make reservations at the resorts operated by the company, which is the only impact I know so far. So if I have any updates, I will let you know. Moving on, let's talk about a non-for-profit health system out of Tennessee called CenterStone. They are notifying current and former patients and employees that their personal health information may have been accessed without their authorization during a data breach. Now, the incident happened between December 12th and 16th of last year, and the following information may have been taken: name, date of birth, social security, driver's license or state ID, medical diagnosis or treatment information, Medicare or Medicaid information, health insurance information. So if you use CenterStone in Tennessee, I believe they're in Nashville, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about an organization or a company called Made in Oregon. I'm assuming they sell wares that are made in Oregon. Now, they say that thousands of online customers may have had their personal and credit card information stolen during a data breach earlier this year. Now, they are based out of Portland, and they sent letters last week to 7,800 customers who purchased items online between February and August of this year, informing them that their data may have been compromised. The company said in a letter that customers' names, billing addresses, shipping addresses, email addresses, and credit card information may have been compromised. And so that is a huge problem. Interestingly enough, they are also aware of a small number of customers whose credit cards may have been used fraudulently. So that's a huge issue. So if you've had anything to do with Made in Oregon, heads up to you. Moving on, let's head on over to Japan and talk about Japanese drug maker Shionogi. They said this past Thursday that its Taiwanese subsidiary was hit by a cyber attack earlier this month, leading to a data breach, although no information regarding their coronavirus vaccine, the work that they're doing there, was leaked. Now, according to the company, import licenses for medical equipment and employee residency permits were released onto the dark web after a computer in its Taipei sales office was infected with a virus mid-October. The attacker has threatened to release more information unless a ransom is paid. And with that, let's go to Blackbaud real quick. We have an update, as you know, that's been going on for months at this point, and they've hit a ton of different healthcare. By virtue of them getting breached, a ton of different healthcare and charities, etc., have to disclose. And this week I only found one, so I'm hoping that it is slowing down, and that would be OSF Healthcare System, based out of Peoria, Illinois, which runs some hospitals apparently in the state. So heads up to you if you go to an OSF Healthcare System hospital in the state of Illinois in the United States. And finally, and we have a few different finalies here because there's quite a lot that's going on with the world, and I wanted to focus on 3 different things that I thought would possibly impact you directly or impact the world. Now, the first one we're going to be talking about is Unit 74455 of the Russia Main Intelligence Directorate, or GRU, because a federal grand jury in Pittsburgh here in the United States indicted 6 members of that unit. And basically, here we go. Now, according to the United States Department of Justice, they've launched multiple cyber attacks around the globe, and these attacks have caused damage and disruption to computer networks worldwide, including France, Georgia, the Netherlands, Georgia the country, Netherlands, Korea, Ukraine, the United Kingdom, and of course the United States. Now, one of the 6 defendants was actually previously charged in 2016 for tampering with the U.S. election. Obviously, that's a very serious allegation. Now, victims of the attacks in the United States include hospitals and other medical facilities, namely in the Heritage Valley Health System in Pennsylvania. They've also hit a FedEx subsidiary known as TNT Express, and also a large U.S. pharmaceutical manufacturer that is unnamed. Together suffered roughly $1 billion in losses due to these attacks. Now, officials said the cyber attacks also included Russian government efforts to undermine, retaliate against, or otherwise destabilize Ukraine, Georgia, election in France, efforts to hold Russia accountable for its use of weapons-grade nerve agents against Novichok and on foreign soil. Novichok is the nerve gas agent, meaning essentially the efforts that we have made globally to hold them accountable for this, they are under attack, as well as the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, after Russian athletes were banned due to government-sponsored doping efforts. If you recall, basically the Olympic committees or whatever, or the anti-doping, came in and banned a lot of Russian athletes, or maybe it was the entire Russian delegation. I can't remember at this point, but obviously that's a huge, huge problem. And I think it really underscores what I was talking about yesterday in my U.S. election security video. But we have a worldwide problem of cyber threat actors from around the globe. In this case, it's Russia, but they are by no means alone. Everybody's hacking everybody at this point. And so when we are looking at potential adversaries to, let's say, the United States and their allied nations, Russia starts to float to the top, as does some others that I mentioned yesterday. So that's obviously a huge, huge problem. And the next, finally, we've got is Amazon. Yes, that Amazon, because they are being hit with a class action lawsuit alleging that essentially their servers are storing biometric voice data from countless callers. And this is actually against the state of Illinois' biometric privacy laws. And so the suit is being launched here in Illinois. I am in Illinois, the Chicagoland area. And so at the center of this suit is Amazon Connect, which is a suite of call center software that Amazon Web Services began licensing out since 2017. One of the companies that Amazon partnered with in order to offer this call center service is a company called Pindrop Security, who specializes in creating what are known as quote-unquote voice prints, which can be used to identify and authenticate callers by the cadence of their voice. Now, the specific voice, like the specific vocal quirks and all of that, similar to like an iris scan or a fingerprint or a facial scan, actually fall under the umbrella of biometric database according to Illinois' Biometric Information Privacy Act, which is state law here. So there's a chance that Amazon ran basically afoul of the state law by collecting that data without obtaining the caller's consent, storing it on their servers in AWS, and then failing to publicly disclose its data retention policies on this, meaning Amazon, every time you would call wherever you were, not just the state of Illinois, even though the lawsuit's coming from here, basically Amazon is storing this information. They're not telling you that they're doing it. They're not asking for your consent in any which way. And obviously here we are. Now, the 3 plaintiffs behind the suit came in contact with Pindrop's technology when they called customer support line for John Hancock, which is a major life insurance provider based out of Chicago. And they were told that they were, quote, no longer required to use a PIN number to sign in, thanks to Pindrop's ability to authenticate through voice recognition, essentially. They got rid of the PIN numbers, and that was obviously rather concerning to the three plaintiffs. Now, according to the suit, and I quote, AWS knowingly intercepted the telephone calls made by plaintiffs to John Hancock and collected and stored plaintiffs' biometric data harvested from those calls, and Pindrop knowingly accepted and analyzed intercepted telephone calls to collect and store plaintiffs' biometric data. Now, I think this is actually a really important issue because as we are talking about privacy around the globe, whether it's Europe's GDPR or the new CCPA in California or the Biometric Information Privacy Act here in Illinois, I think we are starting to realize that these companies are just doing whatever they want, and now we are starting to see laws that are starting to counteract that, which is ideally going to keep them more honest, because Amazon could potentially lose millions and millions of dollars to a class action suit. And if anybody has called, let's say, John Hancock or another customer of Pindrop Security and AWS, that's going to be a huge problem. Those fines could go into the millions or billions. They are designed to basically make it these companies financially hurt when they violate our privacy. So we're going to see where this goes. But if you were not aware, Amazon is recording a whole bunch of stuff. Not to mention, I'd be curious to know if they're doing that through their Amazon Echoes, because obviously those things are always on. I've actually done a live video with a demo unit. I had one of those that they have to be on, listening to absolutely everything you say in order to hear trigger words and then accept commands. And so are they understanding the cadence of my voice and all that kind of stuff when I say the trigger word / do something, or simply just listening to me when I have a conversation in my house and all of that? Not that I have one of these plugged in, I do not, but you know what I mean. So that is a huge issue. And finally, this is the very last one. Let's talk about ad blockers that have been installed over 300,000 times. Nobody likes ads, on whether it's on the mobile phone. You've got these pop-ups. It's a pain in the butt, and so a lot of people download third-party ad blockers and integrate them into things like Chrome to try and block these things. But ad blocker extensions with more than 300,000 active users have been surreptitiously uploading browser data and tampering with your social media accounts, thanks to malware that its new owner introduced a few weeks ago. And this is basically according to a technical analysis and post on GitHub. Now, Hugo Xu, he's the developer of the Nano ad blocker and Nano Defender extensions, said 17 days ago that he no longer had time to maintain this project, and so he sold the rights basically to another developer, and this is all in Google's Chrome web store. Now, Xu told reporters that the Nano ad blocker and Nano Defender that oftentimes are installed together had about 300,000 installations in total. 4 days ago from the reporting, so I think it was about 6 days ago from this article, Raymond Hill, the maker of uBlock Origin, basically the uBlock Origin extension, which is what Nano ad blocker is based on, revealed that the new developers had rolled out updates and added malicious code. Now, the first thing that Hill noticed was the new extension was checking if the user had opened the developer console. If it was open, the extension sent a file titled report to a server outside of your control. And to quote him, in simple words, the extension remotely checks whether you are using the extension DevTools, which is what you would do if you wanted to find out what the extension was doing. Now, the most obvious change end users noticed was that infected browsers, and this is considered an infection, were automatically issuing likes for a large number of Instagram posts with zero input from the users. Now, according to Cyril Gorla, an artificial intelligence and machine learning researcher at the University of California in San Diego, he was talking to reporters, and he said the browser liked more than 200 images from an Instagram account that basically wasn't followed by the user. The screenshot essentially, or rather they took screenshots of this and posted it out there. But that's a huge problem. This was a legitimate application that was taken over by somebody else when the original developer sold the rights. They inserted malicious code into this, and as soon as you update your ad blocker, which you faithfully and probably securely used for God knows how long, it is now starting to harvest information and do things like Instagram posts for you if you have an Instagram account. That's insane. But this is what this is doing, and we have to always make sure that we are maintaining a certain amount of vigilance with what we install. I don't install extensions into my web browsers like Chrome or anything like that beyond, let's say, some of the most basic ones. And even then, when I have, let's say, those one or two that need some kind of update, I tend to run the change logs or read the change logs, if I can find them. Oftentimes, in a situation like this, if it's being malicious, you're not going to get a notification saying, yeah, this is going to like Instagram posts for you or scrape your data in any which way. But they might have rather vague language that shows you that maybe you as a consumer of this free product or potentially a product you pay for isn't necessarily doing everything in your best interest. So something to think about, but those were your breaches of the week. We are 25 minutes in. These videos just keep getting longer, but there just is more exposure out there, whether it's quote unquote legitimate, like an Amazon just scraping your data for their own reason or needs, even though they shouldn't be doing that, to ad blockers, to a whole bunch of exfiltrated data. Were you affected? You probably were. Let's just go there. And so those are your breaches of the week. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.